Hey, welcome to Madhouse Magazine Radio Hour. We are no longer live from Dennis's house. As I was just explaining to my guest, Mike and Mike, that there was a lawsuit in Panama City, that there was a show called Live from Dennis's house there, so we can no longer use that name. So we're going under the name Madhouse Magazine Radio Hour, and we are spotlighting today Lou Reed Transformer.
Excellent.
One of the greatest albums ever made, I will say. And Lou Reed, of course, one of the greatest artists of all time. So, where do you guys want to start?
Who produced the album?
No, we're not ready to talk about the album yet.
Okay.
As you know, first we start with long-distance dedications, and we talk about a little stuff before we play some songs, then we come back to it. So, the thing about Lou Reed is that he was the king of New York, as we all know, of course. And this brings me back to a time, back to the 60s, early 70s, when it was dirty New York City, the greatest place on the earth, the best movement of all time, I would say. Picture this, if you will, a small Dennis, age 6 to 8 or whatever it is. But I have this one story that one time with my mother and my 4 siblings were walking through the filthy, disgusting New York City, going somewhere. I don't remember where we were going. But anyway, on the corner, there was a street person who happened to be a midget, or as you might say now, a little person, right? But he was selling his wares or whatever, and he had a blanket out. I don't even remember what he was selling, but he had a blanket out, right? So my brother Thomas, who's 5 years older than me, so say I was 5, he was 10 or something like that. Anyway, he happened to step on the midget's blanket as we're walking through New York City, and the guy came running after him, yelling and screaming. This crazy little midget. This horrified me as a child. I believe I was in a carriage or something, or maybe I was walking. I don't know. But to this day, I'm terrified of midgets, and so is my brother Thomas.
Because the Wizard of Oz is out.
Exactly. Like some people are afraid of clowns, but I have this. My whole family is afraid of midgets. No, screw it, because we're traumatized by him. He attacked me. So therefore they'll be known as midgets forever.
Have you ever watched Time Bandits with Terry Gilliam? That's a great movie.
No, I know who he is. He's from Monty Python, though. Yeah, I love that.
Film.
What do you
Watch
mean?
It'll turn you around on midgets, Dennis.
Really? Yeah, I might like midgets. Although
you might after this watching this
and
film.
then after you watch that, look up Gidget the midget.
Yes.
I do know that.
Knows all about
That's Bridget.
And that she gets a pass.
That's a whole nother story. This is a family show. Remember that.
She gets hung by the ankles. Yeah, that's great.
So anyway, those are my nice, and it was such a terrible time walking through the city. I was traumatized everywhere I went. I remember the Hare Krishnas. Are you familiar with the Hare Krishnas? Back in the 70s, there were these crazy cult with they shaved their heads and they had these crazy gowns on and hair sticking out of the back, and they were all over New York City.
Airplane.
Yes, exactly. Right? So that was another terrifying thing. But I got another good story for you. That one time my sister was going back to college, she was going to NYU at the time, so we were driving her back early Sunday morning, right? And we stopped at a red light in New York City, and there I'm looking out of my window as a 5-year-old kid or whatever, and there's this enormous homeless street person, black woman, taking a crap in a garbage can on the corner, 2 feet away from me, right?
The flavor of New York City.
Exactly. So I'm looking at her, right? And the funniest part was that she got incensed that I was looking at her taking a crap on a New York City public street, and she got incensed, and she started yelling and screaming, and she said, I'll cut you like paper. And she started yelling.
Like paper. Oh, city.
See, this is what I'm saying. Now, how do you expect to grow up normal under those circumstances? Exactly, you can't. No. And this is the side of New York City that Lou Reed brought to us, and the Velvet Underground, right?
You know who gave movie The Warriors as well.
Well, that was much later, yes, but that showed the darker side of New York City.
The underbelly of New York
Right, but
City.
I kind of miss that New York City, though. Now,
Graffiti subways.
Right, Times Square is now, Toys R Us
Disney
and all of that stuff. But de Blasio's trying to bring it back.
Yeah.
He said that peeing in the street is now legal again, so that's a good
wait.
That's a good move.
I'll be up there on my birthday. I'm gonna let
Do you know who first called Lou Reed the King of New York? Do you know who?
I would say David Bowie.
Bowie did, yes.
Yes.
On
So
stage.
we're going to talk about that. That's very good that you brought that up because there's this sacred triangle, and that's what we're going to call ourselves now. We are now the sacred triangle of this show. But now let's play some songs, and of course we're going to play "Perfect Day" by Lou Reed, and then "Femme Fatale" by the Velvet Underground, and we'll be right back.
Oh, see you then.
Hey, welcome back. Madhouse Magazine Radio Hour 474 The Mix. You just heard Perfect Day by Lou Reed and Femme Fatale by Velvet Underground. Now, I got to tell you, Perfect Day is one of my favorite songs of all time. And that at first, when you listen to it, this is the beauty of it, that when you first listen to it, you think it's a beautiful love song and it's about Lou Reed and his girlfriend hanging out, having a perfect day. But when you find out that it's actually about heroin, it turns very dark very quickly, that he's talking about his perfect day hanging out with his girlfriend heroin and doing heroin, and it's just so
that
sick.
seems to be the love affair throughout his music.
Right, exactly.
Through his whole career. But what's cool is like in the Trainspotting soundtrack is they use his and Iggy's soundtrack as their soundtrack.
Right,
really cool.
right.
Yeah.
So then, like I mentioned before, the Sacred Triangle. We are the Sacred Triangle on this show, and we're going to talk about those sacred triangles there of Bowie, Iggy, and Lou Reed. But let's start from the beginning, if you will, because we're spotlighting this album. It's called Transformer. It's Lou Reed's second album, of course, and it was produced by Bowie, arranged by Mick Ronson, and Mick Ronson, of course, was Bowie's guitar player. That guy was awesome, I gotta say. Lou Reed, the king of New York. You know what his name was? Louis Allen Reed, born March 2nd, 1942 at Bethel Hospital in Brooklyn.
What was his Jewish name, though?
I'm going to tell you, grew up in Freeport, Long Island. He was the son of Toby and Sidney Joseph Reed, an accountant. His family was Jewish. His father had changed his name from Rabinowitz to Reed.
Shlomo.
Right. Reed later said that although he was Jewish, his real God was rock and roll.
Rock and roll.
Exactly. So now here's how I relate this back to myself again, that he was born in L Hospital in Brooklyn, which is now known as Brookdale Hospital in East New York section of Brooklyn. And I actually worked at that hospital for many years. And I worked on the midnight shift, and it was the worst. East New York is, if you didn't know, the worst place on earth, basically. That it's the highest murder rate in New York City. And I worked in this, and where I had to come in at midnight, and the parking lot had armed guards with barbed wire all around the parking lot.
Fantastic! Wow, I actually really enjoyed it.
It was kind of cool,
dude.
and then I had to go through the emergency room to get to where I had to work.
He said it was bad, but it's like kind of fun.
So
like, come on.
There's these guys laying on stretcher every single night. There was multiple gunshots, multiple stabbings and shit. Wow. So there were people on stretchers covered in blood reaching out for me as I'm trying to walk by. I was like, get out of here. Leave me alone. Don't touch me. Yeah, so it was the worst place in town in the entire city at that point. And now I got to say it's equally as bad. It's not gotten better since then. So do not ever go there if you need to.
It sounds fantastic.
Love it. So anyway, like I said, his name was Rabinowitz. Shlomo Rabinowitz.
What was it? Did his mother have like a strange name like Tessie or
no, like that was the last show.
No, I'm saying
Toby was her name. I just said,
Toby,
yeah,
right.
Toby and Sydney.
Toby.
So anyway, yeah. So all right. So he had mental problems back in the day when he was a child, and he had depression. He was anxious, socially unresponsive, right? And did you know that he was also homosexual?
Well,
so
possibly
You got electroshock.
right, that's
Possibly.
it. That's the thing. He had what they called it back then, electroconvulsive therapy, known as ECT, or as Ramones called it, gimme shock treatment. And Lou Reed said that his father gave it to him to try to cure him of his homosexuality. And he later wrote a song about it, like "Kill Your Sons," it was called.
I heard Mike Pence wrote a bill about it.
So what it is actually is that they connect electrons and conductors to your nads, and they show you pictures of guys, and then they shock your nads. So no longer.
Wow.
So you no longer
Can't watch football ever again.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, it's very, very controversial. I have to say, I'm not sure they still do that, or if they do, that's pretty bad. But can you imagine that? Why he's grown up so crazy? Because Lou Reed is crazy. I got to say, I've been watching some interviews with him.
Oh, yeah.
He is craziest mother I've ever seen. He's the angriest guy. He's never smiles. Have you ever seen Lou Reed smile?
I
Think
have
about that.
one interview.
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah.
He liked this guy. He
Really?
was actually sort of attracted to him.
Oh, because
smiled, yeah.
I like every interview I see, he's angry and hostile,
send
and
it to
he's
you.
like calling him a schmuck. Are you happy being a schmuck? And like everything was one word answers.
He is very combative, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, oh man, I'm glad I never interviewed Lou Reed.
The schmuck stops here.
He's very angry. So let's talk about his life here. Keep going from the shock therapy. After that, he went to Syracuse University. Do you know who else went there? Felix Cavallari of the Rascals and
true.
Neil Diamond, I think, went there too.
Ooh.
We talked about him last time, didn't we?
That was the last show.
So anyway,
Yeah.
he moved to New York City in 1964 and worked as a songwriter for Pickwick Records. And then he formed the Velvet Underground with John Cale and later Sterling Morrison and Mo Tucker. You know where their first gig was? Summit High School in New Jersey.
New Jersey, baby.
Exactly. They got $12 and they played, I don't know what they played.
But then they got involved with Andy, and it was like...
Right. That's where it started. Now, we got to talk about Andy, but we're going to have to do a whole show, I decided. We're going to have to do a
Just
whole
on Andy.
Velvet Underground show and a whole Andy Warhol show.
Right.
Because his emphasis and his importance in rock and roll cannot be overstated, really. That as important as the Velvet Underground is, because they are the most influential band of all time, I think, that...
One of.
Right, one of.
Yeah.
And I may be
We're punk
saying
rock guys.
the. Exactly, but...
You know.
How
I don't
so?
know.
How do you think?
All right, I'm going to go to that. But anyway, because of Andy Warhol, that's why they became famous, and that's why he is one of the most
But
important
he
figures
was
in rock and
genius
roll.
to have Nico come into the band.
Right, that
Let's
was
get
his
to that.
point. Andy Warhol, yes. He did that, and he did all the multimedia parts. That
Of course, yeah.
They were always performing at the Electric Factory down in New York City, that Andy with all his
Very
freaks
true.
and stuff like that. And he was the first one to have the multimedia, the pictures behind it, the like that light show and all this stuff.
Well, he became the house band at the most happening thing in New York City.
Exactly.
At the time, which was Andy's warehouse.
Exactly.
You know.
And he became their manager, producer, whatever.
Exactly,
He produced
yeah.
their first album, and he was the one who said, all right, let's get this girl Nico in here, right?
Who was
And
not just your random girl.
What? Tell us about Nico. You know
Well,
anything
yeah,
about Nico?
she was a German model. She was a great vocalist and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And like the first Velvet Underground record that came out has like an iconic logo.
Right, the banana.
The banana peel, and like you peeled it, it had a pink banana underneath. It was great, but like the album itself, like it's very iconic.
Right,
and he like Lou was actually a little upset like having her in the band. at
Right,
first.
he's the singer.
Yeah, he was like, "This is my band," and Andy was like, "No, this will work out great. This will work out great. It's gonna be fantastic. It's gonna be."
Yeah, I was just gonna say, do the hair.
It'll be great. It'll just be great. It's gonna be great. You got to try it out, Lou. I'm telling you. I know. She's fantastic. Then boom. So like he let her into the band, and then he was like kind of fell in love with her. Wrote a few songs with her.
Yeah.
Went on to do that, and then Iggy stole her for a little while.
Right, that's what I'm saying. This is again
Yeah.
the sacred triangle.
Keep going.
That Lou Reed dated her, then
Yeah.
Iggy dated her.
Exactly.
And Bowie ran into her one time.
Exactly.
And backstage because she dated Brian Jones.
She was a catalyst to the part of this whole like movement. At that
Exactly.
point.
Yeah, she
Did
was.
she have Jim Morrison at one point too?
Maybe.
Yes.
Most
No,
likely.
absolutely.
Because in the movie, right? Don't they go to
That is Nico.
Warhol's place?
Yes.
Yeah. See, I was thinking about that. It's the coolest place in the world, but wouldn't you think it was the weirdest place in 1967 or 6, whatever, if you went to this place in the city and you're like, oh my God, these are the freakiest, weirdest people I've ever seen in my life.
Exactly.
It's no longer standing. Actually, I think they knocked it down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I saw it in an interview.
They should have been in a museum. See, this is why I'm saying we need a whole show just on the Velvet Underground and Andy Warhol. Because I saw another interview with him and Edie Sedgwick.
Edie's.
Right. And they came on to Merv Griffin's show, right? And Edie said, he's not going to answer any
Exactly.
questions. He's going to whisper to me. You can ask him the questions. He'll whisper to me the answers,
crazy.
and I'll tell him back to you.
Nuts.
So, this is amazing. So, all right. So let's get to Velvet Underground and their importance, right? So they were so far ahead of their time, right? That this is 1965, 66. Lou Reed is writing songs about heroin, which is shocking and unheard of, you know?
Way
Nobody
underground.
did this. This is outrageous. Waiting for the man, about waiting for your drug dealer, you know? And they're hanging out with all these transgenders and
Dun,
these
dun, dun, dun.
people.
Dun, 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 dun. You better hit her.
Right, you know,
yeah,
like
it's crazy.
because right now, transgender is, you know, it's in fashion and it's cool to be transgender. But can you imagine
It's
what it's
cool?
like in 1967?
Yeah, man.
I know it's cool.
That
He's got
is,
a point.
it is, you know. I would
It's
be trans.
current. I don't know
I'd
if
be
it's cool.
transgender if I could. It's just I don't think I can pull it off. Nobody's buying me as a woman.
Don't sell yourself short.
So, you know, Macchielli, he can pull off a good woman, don't you think?
Aw, you're so sweet.
So yeah, so they came out with their first album, like I said, that Velvet Underground Banana
Nico.
album, right? And they in turn became one of the most influential bands of all time. They incorporated psychedelia, punk, instrumental, sound effects, multimedia, everything you could ever wanted. But they never sold one album because they were way ahead of their time.
Very avant-garde.
Right.
Art rock.
That their albums never broke the top 150, you know, the best of it. They came out with 4 classic albums, and by 1970, Lou Reed left the band.
Exactly.
Warhol left earlier than that. Right after the first album, him and Nico were thrown out.
Well, they kicked them out.
Exactly, yeah. So, you know, after that, so after
That's 'cause
leaving...
Lou had integrity.
Exactly.
He wanted to move on and do stuff.
That's his thing. He was one of the best songwriters of all time.
Exactly.
So that's what we're going to talk about now. So after Velvet Underground broke up, Lou, he actually moved back to his parents' home on Long Island and took a job at his father's tax accounting firm as a typist. Earning $40 a week. Can you picture that in 1970? Lou Reed, you walk into the accounting firm, there's Lou Reed typing.
But here's the weird thing. 2 years later, this album comes out.
Exactly.
2 years later. That's terrible.
Yes,
So
that's
if
what
you're
I'm
ever
saying.
like down in your life and you're like, oh God, it's terrible. Like I just lost my job and all this bad stuff's going on.
Yeah.
In 2 years, that came out. So
Right. So that's the thing. In 1971, he signed a recording contract with RCA and recorded his first solo album. And it was a lot of songs that he had written with the Velvet Underground, but
Exactly.
it was not a commercial success. You know, for Lou Reed fans, you know, I am a huge Lou Reed fan. I love every song he's ever written, basically, and I love that album. It was overlooked by most pop music critics and did not sell well. So we're going to get to Transformer now, and we're going to talk about other stuff. So why don't we take a break and play some more music now? Because we're going to get to his greatest songs of all time. So why don't we play them? Take a break.
right.
Let's play Walk on the Wild Side by Lou Reed off of this album. And then we're going to play
FLA.
Sweet Jane from the Velvet Underground, and we'll be right back.
Peace.
Hey, welcome back. Madhouse Magazine Radio Hour. You just heard. What songs did you just hear? You just heard Walk on the Wild Side by Lou Reed and Sweet Jane
said, hey,
by the
babe.
Velvet
I said, Walk
Underground
on the
here on
Wild.
474 The Mix. And I want to talk about Walk on the Wild Side now
Walk on
off
it.
of this album.
Go.
Because it is Lou Reed's signature song. And Lou Reed said in an interview recently, he said, you know,
Recently, like yesterday.
my obituary has already been written, and it starts out do 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 because that's it. Everybody thinks, you know, that the non Lou Reed fan, the casual Lou Reed fan, if you will, knows him from that song. It was the most popular
Everyone knows
song
him
of
from
all
that
time,
song.
right?
But the Velvet songs are cool too. Like
No,
honestly, like
those
the
songs
stuff off
are
the
awesome.
like White Heat, like
all
you
of
know,
those songs.
Sister Ray.
That Walk on the Wild Side went to number 16. You believe that? It should have been number 1, of course.
Agreed.
But despite its touching on taboo topics such as transgenders, drugs, male prostitution, and Mike's favorite, oral sex. Each verse.
Which Mike?
Where's
Both.
Glory hole?
I have a question too.
Yes.
Glory
What's
hole
cool
days.
about it is they also like Sugar Plum Fairy. That's someone.
I'm going to get to that,
Okay.
of course. So each verse refers to one of the superstars from Andy Warhol's factory warehouse, his New York studio known as The Factory, right? So I'm going to go in depth on this song here, and we're going to talk about it. You guys sing a verse, and I'm going to tell you who it's about. So Holly from verse 1, this verse, Padron?
She's from the island.
Holly, no. Holly came from Miami, FLA.
FLA.
Hitchhiked away across the USA, right? So this is based on Holly Woodlawn, a transgender actress who lived in Miami and in 1962 after being bullied by transphobes. Wow, transphobes. Was that such a thing in 1962?
Apparently it was.
I think everybody was back in 62. So anyway, she was 15. She ran away from home and, as the story tells, learned how to pluck her eyebrows and shave her legs while hitchhiking to New York City. And she died in 2015. So then the next verse, Candy
came from out
on the island.
Yeah.
In the back room, she was everybody's
everybody's
darling,
darling.
right? So Candy is based on Candy Darling.
Did she give something else too? as well?
Exactly.
Oh.
She's a transgender actress and the subject of an earlier song by Lou Reed called Candy Says.
Candy Says.
She grew up on Long Island and was a regular at the back room of Max's Kansas City. And that's what they said. In the back room, she was everybody's darling, even when she was...
Giving
Go ahead,
something. What was she
Pacioli.
giving?
Don't be afraid.
What was she doing?
Glory
I don't know.
hole days?
I have no idea.
Yes, you do.
No, I
do
have no
it.
idea.
Say it. Padron,
Give
Are
it
you
something.
man enough?
Give it
I'm not
something.
doing it.
you're allowed to say head.
Give it something.
I thought this was a kid-friendly show.
Glory
So
hole
anyway,
days.
It was a kid-friendly
Candy
show.
died in 1974. So it's this is what I'm saying. Back in that
Wow.
day, this is outrageousness.
Yeah.
He's writing about this stuff, and it became a number 16 hit. And,
Sugar
and
Plum Fairy
at the same
had to hit
time,
the street.
it's the DeFranco family and all this pop stuff going on. It's outrageous. So next, Little Joe. He's the nickname of Joe D'Alessandro, who in one of these, Andy Warhol was making movies at this time, and it was called Flesh, a 1968 film about a teenage hustler, a male hustler. So, and this guy, Joe D'Alessandro, he was actually a real-life actor. He went on to many other things, and he said in an interview that he had never met Lou Reed, and that the lyrics are based on his character in that movie, not on him. So he wanted to emphasize he was not a male hustler. Right. So, and then of course, Sugar Plum Fairy came and hit the streets looking for soul food and a place to eat. So Sugar Plum Fairy was a reference to actor Joe Campbell, who played a character in Warhol's 65 film My Hustler. And do you know what Sugar Plum Fairy means back then? What, Padron? It was a reference to a drug dealer back
baby.
then. Yes. So, and then Jackie, of course, is based on Jackie Curtis. What's the Jackie lyrics? Do we remember that? I'm drawing a blank here.
Wait, Jackie?
Jackie, just speeding away. Must have been James Dean for a day.
Oh, right.
Blah, 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 blah.
Should have seen him go.
No.
All right. Anyway, so Jackie was based on Jackie Curtis, another Warhol actor who was a transgender. Who were all these transgenders? I've never met a transgender back then. What are you doing, Padron? Sit up straight.
Would you not
behave
go
yourself.
Over? Would you not go over?
Sit up straight. Behave yourself. All right. So Jackie Curtis, she died at age 38 of an overdose in 1985. So there you go. That was the song. Walk on the Wild Side. And that really was a Walk on the Wild
Dennis,
Side.
you gotta roll
That
off.
is sick as stuff. Did you know that? Nobody knew
No, I
that.
didn't know
Besides
some of
us
that.
three. Maybe us three knew it, but the people out there did
did.
not know that.
Not
They
know
just
it.
think it's a song. It's a nice song. Do, and the Color Girls
Color
go.
Girls sing.
And you know who the Color Girls are singing back there?
The Supremes.
No. Yes, that would be cool. But they were known as the Thunder Thighs on this album. That's what
Holy
they were
smokes.
referred to as. So that's why this is one of the greatest albums of all time. I'm going to tell you now the songs
No,
are
but
here.
the production, Bowie is amazing.
Right,
Like, seriously. Like, that was like a genius, noticing another genius and being like, look, we have to produce this.
Right, let's talk
now.
about the Sacred Triangle now while we're at this.
Very true,
That because we don't know who came first. Well, actually, we do know who came first. Lou Reed, Velvet Underground came first. And he absolutely influenced David Bowie. David Bowie admitted it. I've seen it in interviews that this was 1965, 66, 67. Bowie was nowhere
67,
nowhere to be at all. And David Bowie was hugely influential. He recorded his own version of Waiting for the Man.
Very true.
And he loved the Velvet Underground, as did Iggy Pop. So then you get to the 70s here. Iggy's career was in shambles because
Falling
he was
apart.
a drug addict, complete, total drug addict.
Totally
Lou
insane.
Reed,
Wow.
his career was in shambles. He was a typist at his
About to
dad's
move back into his dad's house.
accountant
Exactly.
thing. And David Bowie, he
Was
had
David Bowie.
one hit song with Space Oddity, and his career was nowhere at this point in the early 70s too. But then came Ziggy Stardust.
Exactly.
And then came Transformer that David Bowie produced.
Well, let's
and
not
then came
forget Raw Power.
Right. Bowie remixed Raw Power as well. So
All
this is,
within 3 years of each other.
and then they all got together and influenced each other during the early 70s, and they put out masterpieces. They all produced, worked on.
There's a
all
famous
these
picture of Iggy in the middle, Bowie, Lou Reed.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
All right, so now let's talk about this album here. Let's talk about these songs. Perfect Day, my favorite Lou Reed song.
One
I'm
of
not
mine,
even
too.
going any further. It's just, if you want to know what it's like to be in New York City and do heroin, listen to Perfect Day. Mike Padron can tell you. He knows that. Satellite of
know what
Love,
he's talking about.
Vicious,
Satellite Love.
Andy's Chest, Telephone Conversation, New York Telephone Conversation, Good Night Ladies, Hanging Round, Makeup, Wagon Wheel.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. Now let's look at this album here before we smell it. Now you see this picture here? This was done by Mick Rock. And you know why it became awesome? Because he effed up in the dark room and he overexposed it. And he said, well, wait, that looks kind of cool. So let's use it as the album cover. See, that's kind of stuff you won't experience anymore
Exactly.
because of digital stuff. So let's smell the album cover.
Is this yours?
It's absolutely mine. Who else
When
would
was
it be?
it purchased?
1972.
Is that just the cover? Is there vinyl
Where?
in there?
There's the vinyl right here, bro.
Where was it purchased?
It was purchased at Bleecker Bob's in the Village.
In the village.
In the village.
Right,
This is authentic.
as I was running away from the midget in the first story,
He picked it up.
my mom stopped and we went to Bleecker Bob's. That's where we were heading, to Bleecker Bob's, so I
Ooh,
can
this
pick up
one-
this album.
This smells
Six,
wonderful.
dude.
Exactly, man. I was way ahead of my time.
Was
I
that
was
before or after Vietnam?
on my first leave from my first tour of duty.
Yeah, yeah. That's funny.
So that's it. Did we play? Yeah, we already
What does it
played the
smell like to
second.
you, Mike? What does it smell like to you?
Honestly, wait.
Go ahead. Just be honest with the listeners.
Yes, this is now part of the story.
It smells a little bit like the New York City subway system.
Exactly. If you're playing at home, go get your album, and we're gonna
smells
smell
a
it
little bit
together.
like graffiti and like wet paint.
And urine, don't forget.
The system.
So on October 27th, 2013, Lou Reed died at his home in Southampton, New York, age 71.
Correct.
Very sad.
Yeah.
Yes,
What did he
and-
die of? Kidney failure? I think?
Yeah, he had
Liver
a
failure?
transplant, and he had a lot of stuff going on with
Just,
him. So yeah, it was
Liver
a-
failure. I think.
yeah, something. Kidney and liver. They put his liver where his kidney was, and
See, just
it
clocked
didn't
out.
work. So
Stop the poor guy.
yeah, no,
He had
he was
problems.
No, whatever.
Hey,
but
do you
like
know
I said,
anything about? This is totally off the topic, and Dennis is getting a little nervous.
Yeah,
This
we're
is
cutting
not
this
on
off.
his notes, and we're
We're
cutting
at
it
the
off.
30%,
No, we're not cutting it
bro.
off. He put out an album, the Hudson River Meditation, before he died. Can you elaborate on that?
No, I don't know anything about this. You elaborate on this.
I have it.
What is this?
Because
'Cause I know he got involved into Tai Chi.
Like these sound, yeah.
And he was talking about that. I saw an interview with him. He was in Australia, and he was saying, "I live by the river,
Yeah.
so I love
Right.
this place as well."
He
so
put out an album of
of
just
what?
The sounds
of the river,
I think.
and nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Tai
not-
Chi punk rock?
Before he passed
Yeah, I
away.
don't know. This is nonsense. But let's wrap this show up now. We're going to play some more songs before we're out of here. Anybody got anything they want to share about Lou Reed, Velvet Underground, before we go? I
One of
didn't
the most
think so.
amazing bands of all time.
Yeah,
Yes,
pioneers.
absolutely.
Actually, yeah.
So, so we're going to wrap this show up. We're going to play Vicious live, New York City, from the Howard Stein Academy of Music.
All right.
And did you know what happened to the Academy of Music? Did you guys see it in maybe that show Vinyl? That the Academy of Music collapsed one time. I forget. It might have been the
yeah.
New York Dolls playing at
The
the
very
time.
first show.
Yeah, and it
With
just
the- yeah, it was
collapsed
New
while
York
everybody
Dolls.
was in there, and it killed
Exactly.
everybody. But nobody died.
Was that factual though?
That was factual. Not they dramatized it.
No, I know,
but there was an explosion and a collapse in the Howard
With the
Stein.
New York Dolls playing there though?
Yes, Academy of Music. Yeah.
Can we do New York Dolls? John?
Oh, absolutely. I think I've already done 2 of them, but never enough.
No.
So anyway, the last song is going to be "Satellite of Love," also from that tour,
Nice.
and then we're going to play "Artist of the Month," and that's it. That's all we have live from Dennis's house. Let's hear it for Lou Reed, Velvet Underground, and the Sacred Triangle, which is us that you're listening to.
Yeah.
Padron, I don't hear you applauding.
I got 2 microphones.